The violence of January 6th was such a shock to America's conscience, it's easy to forget that the Capitol riot was just one piece of a widespread, multi-front, and in some cases, a carefully organized attempt to overturn the results of the 2020 election. While the sudden and violent invasion of the Capitol was meant to prevent the official counting and certifying of votes, another effort took place more quietly across several key swing states. The so-called fake elector scheme was part of the same plot, and it had the same end goal: to prevent the official tally of the votes that showed Donald Trump had lost the election. It was orchestrated with the help of dozens of Trump allies, including state Republican Party officials in 7 states where Republicans were so enthralled to Donald Trump that many were willing to sign their names to fraudulent documents and present themselves falsely and illegally as electors when it was time for the votes to be certified.
He said we can't enter.
What I said was, for the Capitol Commission, for the governor's office, for the Speaker of the House, for the Speaker of the Senate, the Capitol is closed unless you have an office here that conducts business today, or if you are taking part in the Electoral College process. Anybody else is not permitted to come in.
They are here to
Yeah, the electors are already here. They've been checked in.
They're also electors.
Capitol is closed. All 16 electors that we've been advised by the governor's staff that we're going to be here to vote in the Electoral College have been checked in. They're already here.
That unbelievable scene unfolded when Trump's fake electors tried to get into the Michigan State Capitol to subvert the certification of that state's electoral votes, which were won by Joe Biden in 2020. And that bit of tape, that brazen and calculated disregard for the democratic process of the rules and norms and laws that keep our country free, that is why we need to keep our eyes on what's happening with Donald Trump's Republican Party in the states. We know that these 7 swing states were a key part of Donald Trump's attempt to overturn the last election. And as the former Ohio Democratic Party chair, David Pepper, famously articulated in his book, states have become laboratories of autocracy, where if enough power amasses in the wrong hands, it could pose a serious threat to democracy. So with that in mind, we're going to touch down in each of those 7 crucial swing states targeted by Donald Trump in 2020 as part of his attempt to overturn the election. See what kind of laboratories are being run now ahead of another high-stakes election where democracy itself is on the line. And we begin today with Michigan, where voters will head to the polls on Tuesday for the Democratic and Republican primaries. In Michigan, 16 individuals were criminally charged for submitting false certificates in December of 2020 that claimed they were legitimate electors for Donald Trump, despite the fact that Joe Biden won that state and all of its electoral votes. There were no Republican electors in 2020. Among the 16 individuals was the former co-chair of the Republican GOP and Michigan's Republican National Committee woman. All right, fast forward to the 2022 midterms, when promoting Trump's big lie became the main criteria for running for office as a Republican in Michigan. The known conspiracy theorist and Trump worshiper Kristina Karamo ran for Michigan Secretary of State on a platform of election denial. She went on to lose that election, but refused to concede. To this day, she refuses to concede. And then she was chosen to chair the Michigan Republican Party. According to the New York Times, Karamo drove the state party into more than $600,000 of debt, tried to sell the party's headquarters, expelled party officials with whom she disagreed, and caused donors to flee. The state party voted last month to replace her with this guy, former Congressman Pete Hegstra, who you might remember as the former chair of the House Intelligence Committee, who famously in 2009, again, as the sitting chair of the House Intelligence Committee, live tweeted what was supposed to be a secret trip to Iraq. He also served as Donald Trump's ambassador to the Netherlands, during which time the most notable thing he did was to get called out on Dutch TV for lying about Islamic extremism in the Netherlands and then calling his own words fake news. So that's the new head of the Michigan GOP, but the old head of the party, Kristina Karamo, the one who never conceded her loss in the Secretary of State race in 2022, well, it should come as no surprise that she's also not conceding defeat here. She's refused to leave her post as chair of the Michigan Republican Party. And as you might imagine, this complicates matters for Republican voters in Michigan with the state's primary coming up on Tuesday. Both self-proclaimed chairs of the state party are currently planning to host dueling conventions later in the week on different sides of the state unless a judge forces Karamo to back off. Right now, this is a giant mess for the GOP. But remember that all sides of this giant mess, though it is currently a chaotic internecine Republican war, are Trump loyalists. Both major players here have also proven themselves to be brazenly willing to deny the truth. And that, combined with everything we know about the role that Michigan Republicans played in Donald Trump's shenanigans in 2020, should be cause for concern for every American who wants to make it out of 2024 with democracy intact.